This is Optimal Relationships Daily, episode 1666, Finding Meaning in Friendships That End, by Dr. Margaret Rutherford of drmargaretrutherford.com. Hello, everybody. I am Greg Audino, your host and narrator. Thanks a lot for starting your week off with us here on ORD. Certainly the right note to start on, I would like to think. We've got a great post on tap from Dr. Margaret Rutherford, and she is going to be addressing friendships today, which are unfortunately often overlooked when it comes to relationship content. Not this time, though. This article is really enlightening, and I'm excited to share it. So let's give her work the floor and start optimizing your life. Finding Meaning in Friendships That End, by Dr. Margaret Rutherford of drmargaretrutherford.com. I remember the first Christmas break after my freshman year in college. My high school friends and I had just seen each other at Thanksgiving. Everything had been fantastic. Lots of reminiscing as well as catching up, laughing about someone sporting a new beard or talk about who was still liking who. Yet, something had changed. We had more time to be together, but there was less to talk about. Just how many times could you tell the same funny story? Maybe a handful of us still felt close, but the vast majority? Not really. Friendships. Some abide through thick and thin. No matter what happens in your life, no matter if you go through a time when you are not all that easy to like, that friend is sticking around. These are the friends that will tell you the truth, even when it hurts. And you know that when and wherever they needed you, you'd be there, no questions asked, and vice versa. These kinds of friends are of unmeasurable value. But other friendships don't endure. Perhaps the friendship doesn't survive losing the context of how it began. Maybe it dwindles because both of you change in some way and the fit isn't as tight or as comfortable as it used to be. Or maybe one of you slams the door and walks out of the friendship, either in anger and hurt, or perhaps more jarringly, for no apparent reason at all. Friendships That Painfully End, My Other Ex. A few years ago, I read a wonderful anthology about female friendships. My Other Ex, Women's True Stories of Leaving and Losing Friends, compiled by Jessica Smock and Stephanie Springer. It features essays by both women who found themselves abandoned by a once treasured friend, as well as the women who ended the friendships. I was more than eager to read it, because it had happened to me. I had had a very good friend end our 35-year-old friendship. We'd laughed over the years that we'd be together in our rockers, me at 90 and her 91, always an important detail, cussing like sailors because we couldn't hear each other. I have many wonderful memories of the years of friendship that I thought would last a lifetime. My kindred spirit opted out with no explanation other than, I, meaning her, am a bad person. She's not a bad person, so I, like many of the writers featured in the book, was left to sop up the remains of my heart that felt as if it had burst all over the floor. I felt like I must have been a terrible friend. I traced over and over our past, trying to find the first sign that she had been backing off. And over the next year or so, and after a couple of embarrassingly out-of-control, angry and pleading phone calls, I emotionally divorced her as well, and stopped shaming myself for something that I couldn't even define. The whole thing remains a mystery to me, but so be it. I spent some time wondering what other relationships might disappear on me, but that didn't last long. And I chose to deepen other friendships that I had made much later in my life, relationships that now more than qualify for visions of their own rocking chairs. I was intrigued to read what others had to say on the topic. What I found was more comprehension, more perspective of both my friend and me. It was a wise choice on the editor's part to include stories on each side of the dynamic. As you travel from one story to the next, you hear the pain of being either person. You can feel the self-doubt and confusion of the one left behind, as well as the guilt of the one choosing to go. And you can begin to piece together what might have always existed in the friendship that had always had the potential to lead to its demise. Or you can see where the love that was so bright at one time had simply weakened in its intensity until it disappeared. And so the end. Both of you need to move on. Fear or anger or sadness or distrust or hurt can keep you stuck. The meaning of friendships that end. The emotional dilemma seems to be discovering the meaning in a relationship, even after it ends, and not viewing it as a waste of time or a mistake now that it's over. As with a divorce, intimate friendships that end remain an important part of the fabric of your life. You learned, you grew, you laughed, and you cried. The challenge is to not allow the anger or shame or guilt you may feel in the wake of the parting of ways to demean what the relationship meant in your life. And, as in divorce, you can likely find those who would be willing to vilify your now ex-friend, and it's important for that not to happen. You can certainly be open to hearing what other trusted friends' views are. Maybe they saw something you didn't see. But she, or he, was your friend a long time. It was intriguing to learn that many of the friendships described in the book were reconciled after the story was told. Perhaps that's a statement about the idea that time can heal, or that misperception and misunderstanding can be resolved with responsible effort and sincerity. Other friendships that have been lost won't have that chance. They have to be grieved. Their time has passed. Whether you or the other did the letting go, you can go on. You just listened to the post titled, Finding Meaning in Friendships That End, by Dr. Margaret Rutherford of drmargaretrutherford.com. And thank you so much to Dr. Margaret for this one. I really liked her content today, as I always do. And while I hope you enjoyed it as well, my real hope is that at the very least, it reaffirmed for you the immense value there is in both sharing our own stories and listening intently to the stories of others, listening openly, and in a way that is free of both judgment and concern for our own egos, if that makes sense. Though it's not easy to be vulnerable in this way all the time, providing others with the kindness, the understanding, and sense of safety that encourages them to do so only helps the process along. And don't forget that storytelling is one means of healing and relating we have as humans that other species don't. It's really critical to who we are, in a psychological sense, in an artistic sense, and so on and so forth. So be sure to lean into it and keep storytelling alive. But that's it for me today, everybody. As always, I thank you for joining and supporting the show. Your listenership is always appreciated, I assure you. Now have a great rest of your day and be sure to come on back tomorrow for more. That's where your optimal life awaits.